We are welcome to this next bit. So like I said, no organization can live in a vacuum. They need some structure, some systems. They need stakeholders. They need an environment, both immediate and then surrounding environment, the wider community, to support them to survive as a going concern. All right. So once again, let's look at these in detail. Now, we are going to examine quite a number of items here. I'll try to keep within time so that you can at least get a whole concept. But if you have any challenges, please get back to me and we'll always look at it. All right. So we'll run through this. The introduction has been given. So no organization lives in a vacuum, right? We all need someone to help us survive. Nobody can live as an island. Same applies to any business entity, right? So we're going to look at the wider environment, which is the PEST. Some books will say the PESTEL factors. We'll look at the immediate context where we use the Michael Porter's 5 forces, and also identify the activities that affects a business's competitiveness in the working environment, in the environment, all right, in the larger environment. So we're going to look at Porter's value chain in this. We'll also visit the product life cycle, like any other living organism. You are giving birth to, you grow, you get to maturity, you die, you move off the scene. Now we'll look at the Boston Consulting Group's matrix on cash cows and stars and the rest. Okay, we'll look at it. Okay, so in the recommended text, if you look at the chapters 6, 7, and 8, you'll find all of this information there. So, and chapters 9 will give us Porter's 5 forces and Porter's value chain. Now, let's kickstart and see. To understand who an organization is, we need to examine the environment in which it operates, right? So you need some world around you to survive. The bigger environment is what we call, or the wider environment is what we call the PEST factors, all right? So the PEST being political, legal, the E being the economic, and then S being the socio-cultural, and then the technological, right? Any organization who does not keep up to standard with these will always be found wanting, right? Now, let's look at this indirect business environment. So like I said, the external business environment of the business are these PEST. Keep up to these, monitor them, manage them accordingly, or according to the expectations of the environment, and you will survive. You always have a competitive edge over your competitors, right? So the political, legal, economic, socio-cultural, technological, they surround the business. So the business always forms a core part of these. So these guys tend to affect us. If we are the business, they affect us and they dictate the direction in which we should move. So you always need to monitor and manage these factors. Why consider the wider environment, business environment? If we have a stable environment, for sure, we can say that the past will be a good predictor of the future. We could rely on previous year's budgets to do some better forecasts for the next year and the years ahead. We could also rely on previous suppliers because they're reliable. We can count on customers because we know they will always do repeat sales. We can count on prices and costs when we are making forecasts, all right? So these wider environments help us to plan for the future based on our past experiences with them. If the environment is complex and unstable, then we are always going to be faced with uncertainties, with risk, with changes, and it could cause the business to plummet or to go down in terms of performance. What causes these conditions, unstable conditions in the wider environment? Globalization, science and technology. We have changing trends. Look at now with this current pandemic, unfortunately, but it becomes fortunate for the IT companies because here you can see people who are keeping up with IT, sustaining their businesses. Those who cannot are losing out. Changing customer values, market regularization, trade liberalizations, and changing social business relationships have caused these complex and unstable scenarios within the business environment, within the wider business environment. The political environment, if we have an unstable political system, then we will not surely have the conducive environment to work. Change of government could cause panic within the systems. It could cause stock prices to even drop down within the UK, within the US, any other place we can think of. Any political instability can cause prices to shake, all right? So the question is, prices of stocks to shake, let me just put it that way. How does government policy affect pharmaceutical industry in the UK? For example, you know, government policies will have to deal with approving new drugs and new vaccines. The government has the large purchasing power. We buy for the NHS. Health education will affect the demand for new drugs, employment, or funding universities to create new graduates, or even funding universities to come out with new drugs and new medications. And there are also employment laws, working hours, mental health, and safety regulations that impact on the pharmaceutical industry. So the bigger picture is always important to look at it. Miss out on the bigger picture, and for sure, your internal activities will struggle. Look at the legal factors. Still, we are on the P, all right? Look at the legal factors affecting the business. Criminal law, company law, employment law, health and safety regulations, data protection, customer rights, environmental laws, tax laws, and the general legal frameworks affect the operations of the business. We must always operate within and comply with these laws and regulations, these edicts and decrees. Otherwise, we'll end up infringing upon fundamental human rights, and this will cause the company to suffer. So the legal environment, let's take a simple question and see. Is ignorance of the various laws which affect the business a possible defense for the accountant in business if the business is taken to court? Remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You need to face the rigors and the consequences if you flout any laws. That's why it is important for you and I, as accountants in business, to be able to understand all the laws and the regulations that govern any business environment or any business entity we work with or we work for. The socio-cultural environment, okay, the socio-cultural environment. What causes unstable socio-cultural situations? Demographics and the labor market, population growth and decline, changing structure, changing age structure of the labor market, changing skills, taste and preferences, gender structures could affect or cause the organization to suffer once these are unstable, okay? So we must always keep up and monitor the age structure. If we are seeing the youth dominating the system, let's produce for the youth. Let's target them and look out for their taste and preferences so that we can meet them. If we are getting more minorities within the system, we have more Black communities within the system, ask yourself, what would they need? All right, so try to bring in the taste and preferences of these, monitor the demographics so that you can survive. Women in work, cultural trends, health and diet, any changes in lifestyles. Monitor this, and then that will help us to produce or provide services and goods and commodities to meet these needs. Otherwise, we'll be found wanting once competitors come in or striking. All right. Again, the socio-cultural environment, the effect on businesses of socio-cultural environment. What happens? Equal opportunities, right? We always see it now where we have no discrimination at work, no racism, no gender, race biases, no religious and sexual orientation biases. We want everyone to be treated freely and fairly. Give paternity and maternity leaves equally to parents, right? Return to work rights, sick pay equally to them. Equal opportunities, pay and promotions, don't pay one class higher than the other class. Recently in PwC, one publication about PwC where they are paying one class of people higher than the other, and it came up in the news, and it's not a good thing, right? Environmentalism, change practices. We're trying to move away from plastics to paper bags, okay? Greening of the business environment, less pollution, greening of the business products. Again, look at the body shops, right? So we need to put all this in place to ensure that we keep up with competition. Then the technology, change when technology improves, adapt to the current trends, be ahead of competitors. Microsoft has already developed or planned for the next 10 years. So they know the kind of preferences and taste of the next 10 of the generation for the next 10 years. So they are always up to speed and trying to keep up with competition or even outwit their competitors. So it's always important that we manage the technology, try to see how they are changing so that we can also change as a business. Otherwise, we will not keep up with competition, and it will cause a great havoc to the going concern prospects of the organization. So look at the IT data processes, whether we have to produce process in large volumes at greater speed and with greater accuracy so that competition can be to our advantage. Effects on IT on organization, data storage, issues as in terms of access, archiving, retrieval, disaster recovery programs. Knowledge of the Data Protection Act information is quite valuable, so we need to process it as a commodity we are buying or selling or exchanging. We need to also process information with the idea of centralizing it and decentralizing it. Those which are critical, we need to centralize it. Those which we think we can decentralize, we give it to those who need it to enhance business processes and IT or information management systems to run perfectly. Also, IT allows for more efficient customer service. Reliance on IT will lead us to continuously change and adapt to competition, right? And it has effects on employees. All employees are expected to be IT literate. Online training courses are there. You need to keep up to it. Information overload is there. Be careful what you keep and what you don't keep. Be careful the kind of information you rely on. Some can be misleading. IT continually changes, so we must always adapt our skills to meet these IT requirements. And of course, it provides flexibility for most organizations working from home, remotely, virtually, holding lectures online. This is an effect of IT on both employees and then employers. So it's quite important. Sometimes we have to outsource some of these activities to external sources. They're important. Sometimes we need to. If we don't have the skill, give it out. But if we can, sometimes we can manage it. But if we don't have even the strength or the labor force, we can outsource it, right? Advantages of outsourcing is that it removes the uncertainty about cost. We know we have to pay them X amount every month, so we just pay them. It helps us to plan long-term, focus on more other important things, and leads to economies of scale. And of course, we can use specialist skills and knowledge that we do not have. Disadvantages is that information could be too important to contract out. Information is a commodity. Give it out, and you may be giving out some core functions of your organization. It could also be high risk in commercial or legal terms. Confidentiality could be breached because of our General Data Protection Act, and no incentive within the company to keep up to date. I give it out, and I'm not concerned about developing the technical skills of my people in that area. And of course, there's no flexibility. You've given it out, you cannot manage them anyhow. All right, so imagine you want to set up a business in the local area. The business is a restaurant. Give examples of the factors that you would like to consider and research into in order to enter the restaurant business. Use the PEST analysis to do these discussions, all right? So in your own time, try to brood over these, okay? So summary, PEST can identify whether the market is growing, but it does not mean that a particular business can survive or compete in that market. So PEST considers a wider business environment, and we normally call them the indirect environmental factors. Okay, let's move to Porter's 5 forces, right? In the immediate activity, we realized that PEST showed that restaurant industry may be viable. But what about a specific restaurant within that industry? Okay, so the internal factors, the immediate environment, okay? To answer this, let's look at the immediate environment. The previous example says, use PEST to analyze your activity about the restaurant that you want to set up. But what about the internal, the immediate context, right? We need Porter's 5 forces to run this. Now, Porter's 5 forces look at the immediate, all right? So they consider 5 forces, so developed by a learned person, Professor Michael Porter, all right? So he's saying that let's look at these ones which are closer to us, not the bigger picture, the immediate ones, okay? A business can make higher profits if it can manage these immediate 5 forces effectively than the others. So here we are talking of industry players, one-to-one, okay? Boot for boot. So the 5 forces looks at these ones. Potential entrants. Are there threats of new entrants? If they come into the market, what will happen? Free entry, free exit. If they come, what will happen to our market share? Bargaining power of suppliers. Are they the only suppliers? Are they the ones having specialist products to provide us? It means they can quote any prices for us, right? Threat of substitutes. If we have products we are producing, I'm only producing iPhone, and if we have substitute like Samsung that can come and give us the same functions and features, what happens to my market share, right? Bargaining power of customers. Are they the only customers? Do they form a core part of our customer base? What will happen if they ask for price reduction and we don't? What will happen to us? And then also industry competitors or rivalry among existing firms. It could be boot for boot. We are all fighting for a market share. So do I need to change my product line? Do I need to penetrate into other markets? So these are these 5 main forces that Porter brings to bear. Let's run through them quickly once again. So threats of new entrants, how high are the barriers to entry? Legal, technical, financial. The lower the barriers the lower the barriers, the greater the competition, right? Bargaining power of suppliers, fewer suppliers, they have greater power. They can dictate the prices to us, all right? Bargaining power of customers, if there are more customers for a product, we don't want to worry. If we have more and 3 of them come to us for lower prices, we don't care because we know we can count on the others. But if they have fewer customers with stronger negotiation base, we stand to lose if we don't adhere to their requirements. Threat of substitute product, like I said, if it is easy to find a substitute, then we should know that we cannot maintain a premium over that product. Somebody can take our market share. So we need to adapt and ensure that we can manage these substitutes, or we can even produce similar ones. What is the most competitive force? Competitive rivalry. Okay, so look at these 5 forces, look at the discussions, examples given, and ask yourself which one will give you a higher or low or medium pressure, using McDonald's as an example. So for McDonald's as example, if we have competitive rivalry, do we have competitors for McDonald's? Yes, we have Burger King, we have KFC, and the others. So of course, the pressure on them will be high. Threats of entry for my McDonald's company, if we are doing an analysis, are there high barriers? Strength of the brand name, economies of scale, investments required, is it high? Ask yourself. I don't think so. If I have my own land and I can open a shop, I just go for the brand name, pay some token in terms of royalties and then percentage on my sales. So the pressure, you can ask yourself whether it is high or low. This is quite debatable. We've plugged in low, but it is quite debatable, right? Threat of substitutes, lots. Pressure is medium. Power of customers have low bargaining power, pressure is low. Power of suppliers, many suppliers of bread and meat, so low pressure on them. This is just a typical example. You can take good time to read through this, right? So again, in your own time, using Coca-Cola as an example, can you identify any, using 5 porters of, or 5 forces of Porter, consider the threats to the Coca-Cola company. For each, decide whether the threat is low pressure, medium pressure, or high pressure, right? Coca-Cola, remember, threats, Pepsi is there. There are more cola drinks around. Somebody can even decide not to go in for caffeine products because of the effects on hydration. So consider this for substitute as well. So in effect, we have looked at the wider environment, which is the indirect, the PEST, the immediate environment, which is the direct, which is Porter's 5 forces, and it will be also useful. These 2, when managed clearly, will be useful for any organization to consider its competitive advantage within the market environment. Before we finish, let's consider 3 other dimensions. All right. So what's the competitive advantage? So competitive advantage is when I have advantage over my peers, over my rivals, over my competitors, and it is gained when I offer greater value, either by offering a lower price or by giving higher benefits and services that justifies my higher price. So 2 ways can help me gain competitive advantage. So there are 3 strategies to gain competitive advantage: cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. So for the cost leadership, make a product of a similar quality to your rivals, but at a lower cost. So we are leveraging on cost. All right. Differentiation, I persuade my customers that my product is superior to that of my rivals. So mine is exceptional. Focus, I tailor my products to a segment of the market and sell them at a premium price. That is focus. So these three strategies were proposed by Michael Porter to help me gain competitive advantage. So 3 of these 3 strategies helps in gaining competitive a competitive advantage over your rivals. All right. Now, Porter developed a value chain model to determine whether and how these firm activities can contribute to our competitive advantages. So by breaking it down into 5 primary and 4 supporting activities, right? So let's look at these 5 primary and then the supporting. The primary 5 talks of the inbound logistics. We receive them. We have the operations. We transform these inbound logistics. Then outbound logistics. So once again, inbound, receive them. And then operations transform what we have received into finished goods, sometimes into work in progress. Outbound, store them, distribute them, deliver them to the customers. Marketing and sales, use some marketing strategies to promote your goods and sell them. And then service, after sales, what do I do? What do I give to my customers after selling to them? So these are the 5 primary activities. The 4 supporting activities says, let's have a firm infrastructure. How are we organized? How are we well placed in terms of resources? Do we have the technology that will help us to keep up to speed and provide after sales services or even to transform our products? Do we have the human resource development prospects to always retain our competitive advantage? And procurement, purchasing, which is key to any other activity, any other business operation, whether service or production. So procurement should also be key. So they put all of these in this matrix, right? So on the horizontal base down there, you find the 5 primary activities, and on top, we have the supporting activities. And when we have all of this combined in a very effective manner, we get the value added, less all the costs involved, we get some great margin, and we are able to sustain our competitive advantages over our rivals. All right. So take a good look at our tutorial question on Starbucks case study. Which strategy do you think Starbucks is using to gain competitive advantage? Is it called leadership or product differentiation or focus? Right. Now find 3 quotes from Porter's value chain analysis of Starbucks to support your opinion. So this is what we look at in our tutorial, right? So 2 more points. Any product giving birth to will rise through some stages. So every product has a life cycle. Like any human being you are giving birth to, you grow to a certain level, you mature, and then you decline and pass out or you die. So in the product life cycle, once we introduce the product, sales is normally low, but once it begins to grow over time, sales increases. It will increase to a certain point when the sales will peak. That is the maturity level, after which point it begins to drop. So be careful the kind of strategies you introduce at each stage. When it is growing, make sure you maximize all your sales. At maturity, again, try to maximize all sales. But remember, once it is declining, you need to either modify the product or try to introduce a new product which will match up with competition. Otherwise, your organization will fade out. So examples, mature products or services often suffer from increased competition as similar products enter the market. So as the market matures for your product, prices may drop or stabilize. There's this YouTube video there at your own time. Take a good look at it and gives you detailed information about this product life cycle. The Boston Consulting Group also developed a matrix on product portfolio and tried to classify products into different classes, into different segments. Which one will give us more cash? Which one is giving us headaches? Which one should we sustain? Which one should we dispose of? So simply it gives us a picture, a snapshot of how the products are doing and which one would benefit the organization more, which one we should leverage on, which one we should count on, which one we should push up, which one we should cut off. So these are the classifications given. It says that any so they try to group the products into 2, using 2 criteria, the relative market share and then the relative market growth rate. Okay, so the growth rate talks about the cash usage and the market share talks of the cash we generate. All right, so any product which has a high market growth rate and a high relative market share, higher market share, is a star. And those stars, we can never dispose them of. We need them. They give us more cash. They use more cash, yes, but they give us more cash. Similarly, we have the cash cow. Cash cow has a lower market growth rate, lower cash usage, but it has a higher market share. It generates more cash. So by the name, cash cow gives us more cash, and we need this because we can milk them to support the rest of the businesses. We can milk them to support those ones which are not surviving. A question mark, for example, is a product which has a high cash usage, but low cash generation. Why? Why should we pump so much money into this product, yet it gives us lower cash liquidity? Okay, so mostly we can even use some of these cash cows to support the question mark so that the question marks can also grow to become either a star or better still, yes, usually to grow into a star, better still, if for nothing at all, it should drop to become a cash cow. And then we have the dogs. These dogs are lower market share, lower market growth. And normally we would like to dispose of these dogs because at the end of the day, they're giving us nothing value for money. Okay, so the BSG matrix is explained further in this YouTube video. You can take a good look at it and at least you get some further insights on it. For this, we're just trying to summarize everything so that in your own pace and time, you can look at it. So these are the points we've looked at. Look at the immediate environment, the wider environment, Porter's 5 forces. How can we gain competitive advantage? How can we sustain it? What strategies should we use? What are the primary activities? What are the supporting activities? Okay, the product life cycle. What are the stages it goes through? What strategies should we put in place during each stage of the product life cycle so that we can retain or sustain our competitive advantage and also to help us be sustainable in the marketplace? All right. So please take time and look at the tutorial question on Starbucks, and we'll look at it when we meet for the live sessions. Thank you. Goodbye.